today's topic is one that's very close to our hearts, Steve and I, because we both suffered from it. Steve in particular had it very badly. And I thought this would be a really good one to talk about. This won't be what you've heard before. So this is not about creative morning routine in the way that you've heard it before or anything like that. If you found that, like we did, when you wake up in the morning, you often or always wake up with a feeling of dread, a feeling of anxiety, your mind goes to all the things that are wrong or that you need to change or that you're worried about or that you're not sure how to solve. So your morning starts off at a disadvantage already. And then you spend the rest of the morning and your day trying to pull yourself out of that. This is for you. Just a little bit of background. Steve and I both suffered from anxiety quite dramatically, and Steve in particular from debilitating anxiety. So he would wake up every morning at one point. When we first met, he was waking up every morning with debilitating anxiety, meaning that he was anxious and couldn't actually do much. So it would take him a long time in the mornings to come out of that. And he was doing meditation and that kind of thing. He taught meditation for 10 years, but he still had this anxiety. And there were times where he would just sit on the end of the couch and not be able to move and not know what to do. The reason I'm sharing all that is because neither of us have that anymore. I want to share with you how we managed to solve it and how you can too. And the first part of this is about what's actually happening in your brain and body while you're asleep. And so that when you wake up, you've got that going on already, or it happens soon after you wake up. And I'm going to give you an analogy that really helps to grasp this and to gain more control. Very briefly, as we teach all the time, thoughts are connections between neurons in the neocortex of your brain, and those connections produce matching chemicals. So as those neurons connect in a particular thought, your brain triggers matching chemicals. Negative thoughts trigger stress chemicals, positive thoughts trigger feel-good chemicals, and those chemicals have an impact on the body which determines how we're feeling and how we're thinking. So what access we have to the cognitive thinking part of the brain. The way this works with morning anxiety is one of two things. So you may find you wake up already in that state, already feeling anxious, worried, despondent, dreading the day, or you may find that you wake up not feeling that, and then as you start thinking about your day or thinking about the challenges you have coming up, thinking about people you have to deal with or work you need to get done or how much you have on your plate, whatever's there, or going to a job that you don't enjoy, as you wake up, as you start thinking about that, that's neurons connecting, triggering stress chemicals that then create those feelings. And then, of course, you're reacting to the feelings, which is more neurons connecting, producing more of the stress chemicals. And so it becomes a vicious circle. And it can be really difficult to break that cycle and start thinking of something else. A lot of people say, oh, be positive, think positively. Well, that's really difficult to do when you're already in that negative feeling, that negative state, because that state, when you wake up, when you feel anxiety in the mornings, your brain and body are in exactly the same state they would be if your life was in danger. And that's why it's so difficult to pull yourself out of it. Because as you try and think positively, or you try and do something that feels good, maybe you watch something, you listen to something, as you do that, your brain is going, no, wait, we're going to die. Because the unconscious part of your brain can't tell the difference between the emotional state you're in, the fears, the worries, the anxiety, and an actual bear about to attack you. The same chemicals are produced. The blood drains from your prefrontal cortex to the back of your brain. And of course, the longer you stay in that state, the more it perpetuates and the more difficult it gets to pull yourself out of it, because your system is full of those stress chemicals, those fight, freeze, flight chemicals. And so then as you go about your day, it's a huge burden and a huge hurdle to overcome if you manage to do anything at all. As I say, Steve was often unable to move. So what's the answer? Understanding that thoughts are connections between neurons and that those connections produce matching chemicals. The first piece, let's go with the one where you wake up already in that state. The reason you're waking up already in that state is that during the night, whatever was going on in your brain during the night, you may or may not remember your dreams or whatever, but your brain was already triggering stress chemicals during the night. So when you wake up, you're already feeling those feelings. And then you do those connections between neurons. So your thoughts go to what these feelings mean, which in other words, for me, it was, I don't know what to do. I don't know how I'm going to overcome this. I can't pay my bills. I've got to deal with those. I've got to phone those people. I don't know what to say to them. All of those kinds of things. And of course, every connection between neurons was adding to the stress chemicals, exacerbating those negative emotions, the anxiety. So think of it this way, and this is the analogy I spoke of. Imagine your brain and body are a ship on the ocean, and during the day while you're awake, you are steering the ship to a certain extent. So depending on what kind of emotional state you're in and what's been going on, you may be making conscious effort to stay in a positive state. So you may be focusing on what needs to be done. You may be feeling inspired to do something. You may be choosing positive thoughts and all that. Now, when you go to sleep at night, you as the captain are going to sleep. So you are no longer steering the ship. In other words, your conscious mind is no longer able to be in control. So while you're asleep, that ship is being tossed around on the ocean. There may be storms, there may be currents that take you off somewhere else, and you don't know because you're asleep. The captain is asleep. Now, when you wake up, and this is the thing to remind yourself, when you wake up, wherever that ship is not to do with you. You didn't take it there because you were asleep. You as the captain were asleep. That ship ended up in these stormy waters or in the wrong destination because it was just on automatic during the night. Now, what do you do as the captain? Most of us wake up, notice that the ship is in the wrong place, and we stay there. Or we try to think of where, or how did the ship get here? Or look at all the scenery, right? We go, oh, look at that terrible current over there and those dark clouds. And, so we engage with where the ship is, thinking that this is us. Instead, as the captain, when you wake up and you notice that your ship is in the wrong place, or it's in a storm, or it's been carried away by currents, you want to grab that wheel and steer it in the direction you want to end up in. Steer it away from the currents, the storms. Now, it's not always easy because sometimes those currents are strong, but having the understanding, maintaining the understanding that that's what you're doing in the moment can make all the difference. So when you wake up and you feel those feelings, that anxiety, recognize, okay, this is my ship that's been carried off during the night by currents because I wasn't awake to steer it, that I was sleeping. Now I'm going to grab that wheel and I'm going to steer it in the direction that I want to end up in. And I'm going to give you exact techniques to be able to do that very shortly. So that's the first step, is recognizing that that's what's happening. And that alone can be really empowering. It's important to realize that sometimes, as I say, those currents are really strong and sometimes you can't see where you're going. So it's all very convincing. The storm is really dark. The currents are really strong. The scenery is horrible. That's all you can see. And what I mean by that is when you wake up in that state, it seems like that's all there is. So whatever thoughts are happening in response to that anxiety, they seem really real. That is the ship in the wrong environment. And when we're in that state, when we're filled with stress chemicals, we don't have access to the cognitive thinking part of our brain. So we can't use logic or reason. We can't think creatively or problem solve. That doesn't mean there isn't a solution. That doesn't mean that what we're looking at is real or the only thing there is. So for me, one of the ways that would happen is I would wake up in the morning and think, I have no options. I can't, I've tried everything and nothing works for me. And I'm just going to go and live on the street. And I would just get carried away and I couldn't see anything else because I didn't have the cognitive thinking part of my brain online. So understanding that when you wake up, if you're already in that state, you're going to grab that wheel and steer your ship in the direction you want to go in. And here's how to grab that wheel. The first thing I want you to do right now, if you're at home, if you're not at home, do it as soon as you get home. I want you to write a note to yourself and put it next to your bed so that you will remember to do this, or put a reminder in your phone. Tonight, before you go to bed, put something next to your bed that you will see first thing in the morning. One thing or two things, because whatever you put there needs to be a color that you love. So your favorite color, and if you don't have a favorite, just pick one you like. So it can be just a colored piece of paper, or it could be an object. It doesn't matter. So that when you open your eyes, you will be able to look at that color. The second thing I want you to put next to your bed, and this could be the same thing because it could be a thing with that color, is something or someone you love. And by something or someone you love, it could be an animal or a person, or it could be a boat or a shoes or a garden. It doesn't matter. So a photograph or a picture of something or someone you love. That's the first step. You do that tonight. And this is important to add to it. Before you go to sleep, set that intention that as soon as you wake up in the morning, regardless of how you feel, the first thing you're going to do is look at the color, whatever color you've put next to your bed, and focus just on that color. Now, this doesn't take long. Absolutely do this. It takes just 60 to 90 seconds to change your brain chemistry from stress chemicals to feel-good chemicals, as long as you're keeping your focus off the negative and on the positive for just that 60 to 90 seconds. That's all it takes. Of course, if your mind keeps going to the negative, you need to steer that ship. Then the clock starts from there, 60 to 90 seconds. So you're going to set that intention as soon as you wake up, as soon as you're aware you're awake, you're going to just look at that color, regardless of how you're feeling. So let's say you wake up and you feel that anxiety immediately. Remember the ship. Your ship has just ended up in the wrong place, and now you're going to grab that wheel and steer it in the direction you want to end up in, because now you as the captain are awake, so you're able to do that. What that means is opening your eyes and looking at that color and just focusing on the color and what you love about it. Allow yourself be fully absorbed in the color. Now, your brain will want to go to the other stuff. That's normal. It thinks there's danger, and you'll answer it. As your brain goes, oh, but what about that? Answer it by going, it's okay, I will come to that. Imagine pressing pause. I'm just going to look at this color for a little while. I'm just going to focus on this color for a few seconds. And once I've done that, I will think about the other things. So you're not trying to deny, you're not trying to push away, because that just makes the danger more. As you feel the anxiety in your body, or the despondency, or whatever it is you're feeling, also acknowledge that. Acknowledge it by going, yes, I'm feeling that because chemicals, right? I've got these stress chemicals in my system. My brain's been producing them during the night. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's something to worry about. I'm just going to focus on this color, and then I will deal with everything else. Now, what you're doing biologically, physiologically, by focusing on the color you love and allowing yourself to get absorbed by it, by what you love about it. Every time your brain wanders, bring it back to the color. Just keep bringing it back to the color. And what you're doing there is you are making very specific neural connections in your brain that are starting to trigger feel-good chemicals instead of the stress chemicals. So what you're effectively doing is starting to switch off the stress chemicals tap and switch on the feel-good chemicals tap. The challenge with this is you won't necessarily feel it yet, because stress chemicals are stronger than feel-good chemicals because they're for survival. The purpose of them is to grab our attention and put it on the danger and keep it on the danger until the danger has gone. That's why stress chemicals are stronger, and it takes a little longer sometimes for you to be able to feel the effects of the feel-good chemicals because they're not as strong. So you need to hold it for a little bit longer. And as I say, 60 to 90 seconds of focusing on the positive without diverting to the negative. So using that analogy of the ship, you need to be steering in the direction of where you want to end up for long enough to actually start to see that environment, that location. Whereas if you start steering there and then you allow the ship to go back to and then you steer again and then you allow the ship to go back to where it was, obviously it's going to take you a lot longer to get there. Which is also okay as long as you remember that that's what's happening, as long as you remind yourself that that's what's happening. It doesn't mean that you can't get to your destination. It just takes longer if the steering keeps going back to the old one. So that's the first one. The second thing, so once you've allowed yourself to focus on that color, then focus on the picture or the photograph or the whatever you've put there that you love. And imagine holding that person, animal, place, activity, whatever it is, in your arms in a hug. And again, if your mind wanders, just keep bringing it back to that, how much you love that person, animal, place, or activity. Again, what you're doing here, you're creating more neural connections that are producing more feel-good chemicals. Again, bringing down the stress chemicals. All of this can take under 2 minutes. So it doesn't need to, you may find that there's resistance. You may find your brain going, oh no, but I've got to get up. I've got to get started. It's 2 minutes. It's quicker than going to the loo, right? Keep telling yourself it's only 2 minutes and then I will get on with everything else. Now, all of this you have set the intention for tonight. And that's don't wait until tomorrow morning. So tonight when you go to bed, you are setting that intention. Oh yes, when I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to look at the color. I'm going to allow myself to feel it. I'm going to look at the thing I love. I'm going to imagine hugging it, right? Then you get up and keep your focus on how the switch in chemicals, you are steering your ship. And as your mind goes to the things you're worried about, the things that you think are causing the anxiety, that's you allowing your ship to go back to the ugly stuff. So grab that wheel again, and it's okay. So you don't need to judge yourself or worry about it. So, oh, I let go of the wheel. Okay, now I'm going to steer the wheel in the other direction. And then, of course, when you wake up tomorrow morning, do all of that. So you set the intention tonight. You're going to do it in the morning when you wake up. Now, if you still feel the anxiety, recognize that is your ship was that far off course. So it's going to take that long to get you back to where you want to be. And bear in mind that this is all physical. This is all physiological. It's connections between neurons and chemicals. That's literally all it is. And it has nothing really to do with anything outside of you. So no matter what is going on outside of you, so in my case, bills I couldn't pay and people I was scared to deal with and all kinds of challenges. But those challenges outside, we can't physically, literally experience them because they're outside of us. Our experience of anything outside of us happens inside of us, and it's connections between neurons and chemicals, creating sensations and feelings. So the reason I'm making a point of that is that gives us more of a sense of control and empowerment, because we can't always do much about what's going on outside of us. But we can connect different neurons. We can create different neural connections, producing different chemicals. It's not always easy, but it is possible, and that's the most important thing. So once you've done that tomorrow morning, then choose where you're putting your focus as you move forward. So for example, while you're brushing your teeth, think about the color, think about the thing you were hugging, and have something to look forward to, even if it's just a cup of coffee. So that's very often that was all I could look forward to was a cup of coffee, and that's okay. And as you do that, again, you'll find more things to look forward to. From now, if you want to change the original trigger, the original reason for the anxiety in the mornings, got a coping skill right now, and of course do this every evening and every morning. It only takes 2 minutes, so there's no reason not to do it. Once you've done that first bit, when you get up, listen to some music that you enjoy, that makes you feel uplifted. And again, it doesn't need to take long. You can do that while you're doing other things. And the biggest thing is that the understanding that this is not just trying to feel better. This is not just listen to music and maybe I'll feel better, or I'm going to think positively. This is physiologically connecting neurons in your brain and producing the chemicals that you will feel eventually. So that's very important to bear in mind. So to change the original reason, so some people wake up with anxiety, some people don't. And two people can have exactly the same challenges, exactly the same circumstances and concerns, and one will feel anxiety and the other one won't. The difference between those two people is the unconscious references that their brain is referring to. So when you wake up and you think about your day ahead or some challenge that you have to deal with, or your life in general, whatever's going on there, in addition to that connection between neurons, unconscious part of your brain is referring to unconscious references that prove something about who you are and how the world works. So the structure in the brain of your self-image and your worldview and what things mean. And then again, those are connections between neurons, and they are producing the chemicals. So you've got a coping skill, you've got a way to move forward and dealing with it in the anxiety in the moment. The next step will be to change the GPS coordinates in that ship, to mix metaphors, so that while you're asleep, it doesn't end up on the rocks or in the storm and that kind of thing. And that as you go about your day, the original trigger for the anxiety is no longer there. So when I mentioned at the beginning of this, Steve and I both suffered from extreme anxiety. We did both of these things. We took control of our chemistry, of our brain and body chemistry, and that didn't work on its own. That's not enough. It can help in the moment. It's not a permanent solution. We also changed the original unconscious references, which were different in each of us, that were causing that anxiety in the first place. And that is what has resulted in no anxiety in the morning, no negativity in the morning, waking up feeling inspired and excited and enjoying life. For the unconscious references, much bigger topic, and we have a masterclass, an online masterclass that does a great job of explaining exactly what those references are, where they come from, how they're formed, and what to do about changing them, how we change them. You can watch that masterclass. You can register for it. I've put the link in the description. Register for that and watch that, and then that will go into a lot more detail on that whole topic. So I hope you found that helpful. Of course, if you did, please do share our videos and our podcasts and like and comment and, the usual. And we will see you again next time. Lots of love to all of you. Bye-bye.